Hi, I'm Christian Mittman from Viva LA. We've created this brand to celebrate all of the amazing creative people, projects, and energy coming out of Los Angeles. It's basically, you know, it's created really to give the people of LA and all those who love LA a brand to really embrace and show how much they love this amazing city.
Viva LA!
Viva LA!
Viva LA!
Viva LA!
Viva LA! Viva LA! Viva LA!
Viva LA!
Viva LA!
North Hollywood loves Viva LA.
Viva LA! Viva LA!
Around the world, it's like I love New York, but for LA.
We want that.
We need it. We need it. Hi, I'm Christian Mittman from Viva LA, but also from Bix Art Group. And today, we're really, really thankful to Google actually for having us be able to speak today and for having Andre's work on display as a 50-year retrospective on display for a few months over the holidays, before the holidays. And we're here really to talk about creativity. I mean, Los Angeles is in, I would say, another renaissance, you know, emerging. And it's about celebrating creativity, but not even just that, it's really about Los Angeles. So in 1961, our first museum was built, LACMA in 1961, but since then, we now have 250 museums since 1961. This is a list of all of them in alphabetical order. But it's not about even museums that I guess, mark how creative a city is. It's really about the people of Los Angeles. And what Bix does and what Andre does, which you'll see, it's really about like harnessing the energy, actually being kind of you know, inspired by the city, by the people, by the resources, by the environment. And Andre, I think, is like the perfect, really, example of someone who has kind of harnessed the creativity of a city. And this was, you know, this is some of his work here, a collage of some of his work. But Google, just recently, we worked together on a 50-year retrospective, which I think really showed I guess, the breadth of Andre's talent and also his positivity. And you know, it's that positivity and creative energy which has, I think, well, it's certainly been the force within his life, but it's also really the inspiration for Viva LA, the movement, the brand, which you'll hear about a little bit later on. But just for those of you who didn't see it, I'm going to give you a little quick overview of the show that was up. So this is you know, kind of a fly-through of the show, but it starts on the left from the Viva LA mural all the way down to the right, 1969 to 2019. And as you can see, Andre's style is really, it's all about line and color and messaging and unusual imagery, I would say. And you know, he's worked with obviously some famous organizations over the years, Absolute and you know, Elton John and obviously the city. But you'll see consistency through his work from the 60s up through really today that are the kind of driving power of his work. And so this is Andre today, and I'd like to introduce him down here. Come on down, Andre. Fantastic. This is the Power of Dreams, right? Very good.
The Power of Dreams.
That's right. So actually, I showed a shot of you back in what, 1980? What year was that?
1989.
89. It still fits.
And that was actually, this was embroidered, and I got this embroidery jacket just before they announced the Berlin Wall was coming down. And when that happened, I put everything on my credit card, and I went to Berlin. It turned out to be one of the best experiences of my life. And this jacket, of course, was like the most perfect visual to kind of summarize what was going on at that time. Because it was obviously 1989 December. It was a very, very heavy time in European and German history.
That's right. So, you know, Andre and I have been working together for about 2 years, and one of the first things that I saw when I went into his amazing studio, actually, where you're just inundated with incredible artwork, were some of his father's paintings. So I'd almost like to just have you start by, maybe we can sit down,
Yeah.
just have you start by telling, you know, for those of you who don't know you, just kind of how you know, I guess where you've come from, what inspires you, what you draw on, you know, for
well, I'll try
the
to
past
make
50
it
years.
in a nutshell.
Okay, yeah, nutshell. And I'll just click through some of these images.
A little
you know,
bit
as you
about
go.
my background, coming to Los Angeles in 1969 to make my fame and fortune, follow the American dream. because I always consider myself as kind of an outsider, because I grew up, my first 18 years were exclusively overseas. I was born in Paris. I lived in France for first 2 years, then Vienna for 3 years. I lived in Indonesia 3 years, Thailand, Iran, and then the last country was Korea. I went all the way through high school in Korea, and I graduated in '69. I'm dating myself, but you know, at this stage in the game, what the hell? So anyway, so I came to Los Angeles because growing up overseas, as so many people in the world, the area that I think that America has been very kind of imperialistic about has been the pop culture. And through music, through movies, television, I think the United States has provided the most universal culture out there. And which, my theory is because of this being about immigrants and all these people coming here, and then it all gets gamished and put back out into the world, because all the other cultures that I lived in were at least 1,000 years old. So they were entrenched in their various cultures. And so I thought, for me, it was either New York or LA, and that was really it for me as far as the United States went. And I'm glad, I'm so happy that at the end of this 50-year arc and having this show at Google representing that I'm really happy and proud to say, Viva LA!
That's right. That's right.
Yes. Oh, and before, sorry, but I would also personally like to thank Google for the opportunity of presenting my 50-year retrospective show, and then also, obviously, this Google Talk, and would like to thank Benjamin Pigg, and who you already met, coordinated all of this, so I'd like to thank him, and it's really a great pleasure in being here, and I think appropriate, because Google, especially over the last, several years, not that long, is a major presence and force now in Southern California and LA specifically.
Right. So thank you for that. So when we first met, we met on Valentine's Day 2018, right? We met on a tour of the Brewery Arts Complex where you live. So it's 350 artists live and work there?
No,
or 500?
It's 340 units. It's
340
a little under 1,000 people, actually. It's billed as the largest creative community in the whole country.
Right. So they all live and work there. It's an unbelievable complex. You've been there for 24, 25 years?
5 years now.
And you have a large studio. When we met, and it was immediately like sparks were flying. I had just left my other company that I had for 20 years, had no idea what I was going to do, and the day I met you, I knew I had to start Bix, actually, because Bix's mission is really to, I guess, set up kind of a culture in a way, like for an artist and an artist business development person like myself, to where creativity can really flourish, right? So you obviously have more creativity than I've ever met, and my whole goal in meeting you was to really kind of let that, just release it in the right way.
And I have to say, this was kind of a very Hollywood, LA moment in meeting this way. We really connected, and it's been very, very, very solid leading up to this Google Vortex today.
You're right.
So here we are.
So and so your studio was like literally packed with paintings and drawings and sculptures and mobiles. You had a lot of influences, but one of the first things I saw were actually your father's paintings.
Right.
So I thought maybe just because you do have a very specific and interesting aesthetic
style,
I think maybe you could talk a little bit about where that comes from.
Exactly, and that takes me back to I have to deal with the childhood a bit, the influences. But my father was a non-objective, a wonderful, fantastic non-objective artist. My mother was a creative person as well. So really from day one, and they originally went to Paris. My father was teaching art in Los Angeles, and they went to Paris to study and to paint more. So, specifically Americans in Paris. So a line I use now is that I got Picasso by the time I was 1. So between my father and being exposed and having these sensitive parents, I feel that I got an awesome education, creative education, just by being there, because I was exposed to so much as a kid that it kind of assimilated itself to me. Which actually I'll draw that to Los Angeles now, because LA is like a polyglot of cultures. It's 186 languages are spoken here. So I think that somehow, in some cosmic way, I seem to be, I think I'm cast well to represent the city, being that even though I'm not from here, not that many people are from here. So it's a combination of all those elements. And so I do feel in my heart that I can again honestly say Viva LA.
Right. And so you've told me in the past, though, about like in 1964, basically this revelation that you had, and I thought maybe that everyone might find that interesting about, about how, how you felt about art, before,
Sure. Well, we all have in our lives, I believe that, there's always pivotal moments in people's lives they can go to and say, well, this started something. This was like that moment where something started. Well, here we are from Valentine's Day. That's an easy one.
Right.
But in 1964, dating myself again, we were coming back to the States for our home leave, and now in the State Department, my father was with the AID program, the State Department, but in the 50s and 60s, you have to realize American Foreign Service was like gold. We lived very well as Americans, as middle-class Americans, overseas and mostly third world countries even. So my parents loved to travel, and those were the days when working for the American government, the fringe benefits were just tremendous. So my parents loved traveling by ship, more than plane. So we always took a really long time getting back to the States. And the summer of 1964, we went through Europe and we were in Venice. And that 1964, there's a Venice Biennale, which is like maybe the world's most famous big art convention thing. But that Venice Biennale in 1964 was really famous because that was the one that Leo Castelli, who was like the all-time American godfather art dealer, and he was the founder of the American pop art movement. And in his gallery, he represented every major pop artist that you can imagine: Rauschenberg, Warhol, Oldenburg, Jasper Johns, Lichtenstein, all of them. So up until that time, I was 13 years old, so up until that time, with my father being a non-objective painter, so I was exposed to other abstract expressionist painters. But when I went to that show, pop art, which involved humor, number one for me was humor, and then advertising, commercial art, so-called commercial art and fine art, and putting it all together to make an exuberant, positive, creative package. Well, I flipped out, and here I am all these years later, doing the same thing. And actually, as a sidebar to that too, because a lot of the artwork that I did see at the formative years in Europe was a lot of religious art, which I didn't really, I always thought it was really creepy, like a lot of blood and spears, pain, pain, pain.
Yeah.
So I just saw so much pain, and I just never got that. So that's when I saw this pop art show, it popped. It is what the word was. And it really popped and made an impression, and here I am all these years later in that tradition.
That's right. And also you told me about going, the Pollock's working Peggy Guggenheim's house in Venice.
Oh, right.
Which I put a slide here, just because I think it's a great
That's
story.
Right. Sorry, it was a great story.
Storytelling day.
So the same Venice, 1964. Peggy Guggenheim, I don't know if you're familiar, but Peggy Guggenheim, who's very wealthy, the Guggenheims inherited.
What do you mean, like art patron, basically art collector? Yeah.
And she was Jackson Pollock's major patron, and he died when he was 44. But she was his major patron, and she had a major a big mansion, a pension, whatever in Venice. I believe by the time of '64, it was already, I think, designated as some kind of a museum-y thing. So after going to that pop art show at the Venice Biennale, then we went to her house. I'll never forget this one either, because, and you can see in the slides, in her house at that time, it was like wallpaper, salon hanging, on top of, completely covered with Jackson Pollock's. If you can imagine that, it was like walking into an atomic bomb. It was so unbelievably powerful. It was overwhelming. So between that show, those are two probably the most profound shows that I can, really obviously talking about still.
And I wanted to bring that up, and I wanted, kind of wanted to hear that story again, because I think going forward, I think it really talks about where your, what your influences are and where your mind is, even in terms of the imagery that you choose or how you go about just creating your works. And so, this is the first piece in the 50-year retrospective, 1969.
Well,
these drawings.
Yeah, these pieces, these were like the first things I did in the summer of '69 in LA. And as you can see, there was always a political bent. Well, since growing up overseas, I was always interested in what's going on in the world. And as you can see, 50 years later, not that much has changed politically. Here we are with the Russians.
Right. So
still with the Russians.
So we're going to go to the.
Yeah. Right. God, those Russians.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But even so, you're saying you get Picasso when you were one, right?
Yeah,
because you're
right.
exposed to it. I think your work has changed a lot over the years, from year to year. That's '69. 10 years later, you're actually in a totally different kind of aesthetic, and I think that holds through going through. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what your influences are over time.
Dealing with that aesthetic, a large part, and I actually, this was a 50-year retrospective. But I actually started painting. My first painting I have, I did two first paintings. One of them I sold when I was 10 to the American ambassador in Indonesia, but I still have the other one. It's as good as anything I've ever done. But so I have 10 years. I've actually 60 years for me. But after seeing that, especially after seeing the pop art show, I really got into words and graphics, images together to help sell each other and to play with the relationship. So messaging with words and graphics for me has always been a through line through my entire, and those things when I did like at 13 years old or whatever, I still think they're as good as anything I've ever done. So again, this is all kind of a lead up to what we're here for in one way is to help explain and promote my newest enterprise, which is the catchphrase branding of Viva LA.
Right. Because it really is about celebrating the creative culture that LA has developed over the years, right? And also, and how do you, to attain, let's say, a title of like the most creative city in the world, whether we're there or we're on our way there, that's a very organic kind of process. But you can lose it, I think, as quickly as you gain that acknowledgement.
Well, and that's very LA too. It's ephemeral.
Right, ephemeral. Yeah, but the Viva LA, I think, really the mission is to create an environment where creativity is actually nurtured, appreciated,
Right.
cultivated, and that, I think, what we've been talking about in our planning of Viva LA and our execution of Viva LA is really about. It's not about any one particular person. It's not about you or me or you or you. It's about creating the environment.
And in that regard,
creativity.
it's about collaboration.
It's about collaboration. That's right.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Which
Personally for me, I feel is very important, and I feel that in my career, it's been one of my most vital aspects, and I really enjoy collaborating and working with other people, because being a self-involved artist can be a lonely thing.
Right.
So I really like working with people. And I think that's come across. And actually, as a little sidebar, I wanted to be an actor, and that's actually what I came here originally to be. And I went to Cal Arts. I was the first actor. And my claim to fame at Cal Arts is I was the first actor accepted at Cal Arts. But one of the reasons I really wanted to become an actor was just to work with other people in a creative process. Because even at that age in high school and everything, I knew that being a self-involved artist, you're by yourself a lot, and it can be a lonely thing. So I was conscious about wanting to reach out and work with other people, and so now when I'm able to get involved in working with somebody like an Elton John or a Bette Midler or Quincy Jones, I'm able to collaborate with them and intermingle the energies. Mm-hmm. So to me, a very excellent friend of mine here in the audience today, who kind of gave me a great phrase that I always use, and I will probably always use, was a simple phrase: how does it feel? And that, I think, is the basis of everything. Everything's about energy and a vibe thing. And that's what I try to imbue in all my work, whether it's a sculpture, because all of this work basically was at the show and is being shown now is like flat work. But I also do a lot of three-dimensional work: sculpting, mobiles, installations, architectural installations. But whatever it is, in whatever form it is, whether it's a costume or a drawing, whatever, it's got to have a feeling to it. It's got to have a vibe. That's the most important thing. How you get that, that's a mystery. But that's what I think, that's why art is a mystery, and you know, it's a constant puzzle of how you balance that.
Well, actually, I mean, you know how I feel about long stories, but there's one that I really like that I think is the perfect. It's kind of the perfect example of, you know, of how your creativity or how your, you know, career has gone, which is really the Elton John story, and even how that jacket came to be, right? So like sometimes, you know, like meeting somebody on the street or having a problem put to you and you don't know how you're going to do it, all of a sudden, boom, the solution presents itself. And I think you know, hearing like how you know. This example, for example, with the embroidery, for example, like how did you come across that as a medium, you know, like why, you know, because you were painting and sculpting, like why embroidery, right? Well,
I'll tell you what, I'll try to make this short because this is I would say a very, very extremely Hollywood-y story. It's appropriate. So I was in 1980. I was married then, and we were walking our dog, and this guy came up to me in the street. It was in Silver Lake, and he introduced himself, and he owned an embroidery company. And he was a fan of mine then, in 1980. And he thought my stuff would work really well in embroidery. And I said, yeah, great, but I didn't have anything at the moment. Well, honest to God, 2 weeks later, I got a call at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon about doing these Elton John costumes. He hated the Bob Mackie outfits that he already had for this tour, and if I'd like to do these costumes. And I said, of course. I said yes. I was a huge fan, especially then. Well, I still am. But at any rate, so within a 24-hour period, I did 27 drawings that night. The messenger picked them up. He picked out 7 that morning, and I called the embroidery, because I was thinking all that night while I was doing the drawings, how do I apply my artwork to a fabric that's going to show up in at least a 50,000-seat venue? So then all of a sudden, the light bulb went off, and I remembered that embroidery guy. And I thought, well, I just was thinking that it was just on the surface, that it would be very opaque and it would show up. So I put that whole deal together within a 24-hour period. And then it wasn't until a couple months, he wore one of the outfits, which became one of his most famous outfits, this piano outfit, because he wore it in Central Park, 400,000 people. I still think it's one of the best concerts he ever gave, rock and roll history, in this piano outfit that nobody ever did a piano outfit. Even 1980, he was already a megastar with costumes. But as you can see, I'll stand up again, but as you can see, what I didn't know at the time, this embroidery thread is a metallic thread. So when the lights hit it, it does not absorb the light. It reflects it back into the camera. So you could take a shot of this. Remember, it's 400,000 people. You could take a shot of it from across a football field, and it would show up crisp, totally crisp. So in its day, 1980, it went as viral as it could in that day. But that was all happenstance and how things, you know, happen. And
but that's what that's the kind of result you get when you have a lot of creative people in one space, bumping into each other, walking your dog.
But
right?
it's also very LA.
It's
because
yeah,
in this creative
yeah.
city, you know, that's the whole thing. In this creative city, you never know. I mean, you'd be just walking down the street and something creative can come out of that.
Right. I mean, I lived in New York for 18 years, right? And I was in architecture then, but you're obviously bumping into literally millions of people. You know, when I moved here, I just didn't see as many people literally physically because they stay home or they're in their car and then they're at their destination, right? So, you know, as LA's, you know, over the past 50 years, as LA is changing, you know, I guess what projects or, you know, are there any projects that stand out, like collaborative projects that stand out to you that really could only happen in LA besides that one? I mean, there was also that.
Well, you mean as far as mine?
Yeah, in terms of your career, like where does the creativity come from? I mean, you know, like is it, you know, like what about the AOL? You know, you were part of the first live streaming event on the internet. Is that right? Right. Because like that's technology and creativity kind of mixing together.
Right, I was, and that's another. It's a very interesting story because, and it's actually right around the corner from here. We're in Venice, California, right now, and in 1996 it was. I became an Absolute artist or Absolute Vodka artist, part of that famous Absolute art campaign. In '91, I did my first ad. And then I did a billboard, a major billboard in San Francisco, which was up for Absolute Miripolsky, which was up for 2 years. But then the third gig for Absolute was a project called the Human Ant Farm. And that was right around the corner from here, and that's where Absolute rented a storefront, and they got an artist to come in, one a week. God, it's amazing, 1996. They had one camera set on the ceiling that was directed to the floor area where artists could set up the floor or a table or whatever and do their artwork within 8 hours a day, like a regular work week, 8 hours a day. And then they had the computer with an operator so that people could type in and ask questions of the artist. And at that time, I believe that was the longest, at that time, up until that time, that was the longest continuous internet live broadcast, 1996. Right. Absolute. Everything with Absolute had to be absolute.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's still the case actually, where really that there are, you know, the business community, the larger players in a community, et cetera, they really do understand the value of art, we hope. And companies like Google actually who understand that you know, even to be an engineer, art, an understanding of art or the exposure to art is just as critical to being an engineer as it is to being an artist, I would think. You know, because a lot of the genius will strike, you know, what's called the shower principle, right? When you're in the shower, all of a sudden, boom.
Totally agree.
You have that idea when you're distracted, right? And so when an engineer is distracted by a painting, they might actually have that idea. And I think that's, you know, I think that's what Absolute, you know, understood. It's certainly what Google understands. And you know, now we're working with the Dream Hotel, which we'll talk about in a little bit later. But they understand that also. And luckily, we do have, you know, partners like that actually but there's always been patrons, I guess, right? From the Guggenheims on down. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your materials, because I think you use fairly unconventional materials, and whether that, you know, I guess how that impacts the type of work.
Well, I'm always looking and interested in new materials, new problem solvers. And the picture that's actually up right now, Zigzag, was part of a fruits and veggie series that I did, and again, using messaging and images together. But these are actually the materials that I use in creating these is cardboard. So I tear cardboard up, and then I into pieces, and then I strip the surface of the cardboard so that the grain or the corrugated sticks out. So it creates a tremendous texture. And then I paint on top of that, and as you can see actually from this slide, shadows become a big part of it. So it's an interesting textural surface adaptation.
And is there any meaning behind these, like the
well, a zigzag is supposed to represent Los Angeles and New York, and as well as, you know, it can be the papers and all that.
So we're zagging out here. Yeah, we're the zags.
We're zagging. We're zagging.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So
we're LA zaggers.
So when we met, you were really in the throes of your shark phase, right? So you've been working on sharks for quite a few years, and that, you know, maybe you could talk a little bit about what the types of figures that you're working with now.
For some reason, I don't know why, but the shark. I'm not into fish, or I mean, I don't know if a shark is not a fish. It is a fish, I think.
I think it is a fish.
It's not a mammal. A dolphin's a mammal.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
At any rate, I don't know why. I just somehow, maybe, you know, from a kid or something, I just use it as some kind of. There's certain things I use a lot of as a symbology, like skulls, not rabbits, but skulls anyway, and somehow sharks. And I got involved with Los Angeles. This is my, again, the 50 years. But it took me 35 years of living in Los Angeles, where something happened in my life that brought me into Los Angeles to such a degree over these last 15 years of continuing a relationship of branding. And I said, and I was talking before about the vibe thing and the energy and how important that is to me, you know, on a metaphysical or, you know, whatever level. And over these 15 years now, I feel I've been melting into the city. Because in 2005, I was commissioned by this organization downtown called the Central City Association of LA, which is probably the top business government lobby group in the city, and the chief organization that's been involved, still obviously involved, but leaders of the downtown Renaissance, which is truly of historic proportions of the redevelopment of downtown and Hollywood as well, but downtown is most of it. So there's the absolute Miripolsky billboard, and that was up for 2 years. It was an amazing thing. You talk about promotion.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. So at any rate, I was commissioned to do a three-dimensional wall sculpture of the downtown LA cityscape, and for this organization, for their power wall, and that brought me in then into the ether or whatever of continuing to brand Los Angeles. So I developed the shark to be like the LA shark. So they all have these sunglasses and these kind of smirky smiles. They are supposed to be humorous. They're not, even though they have the sharp teeth, they're really not supposed to be, they're supposed to be ironic, which I think that in Los Angeles there is
right.
a lot of irony here.
That's right. But I mean, this, you've actually moved really, like if we talk about scale a little bit, I mean, you really are starting to work at a much larger scale over the past few years, like this mural, for example, or even the one just before it,
yes.
Which I think is...
Actually, this is an important one in my life, because I look at this project as one of a pivotal life springboard or something. And this is interesting too, because I painted this entire building. This is only 2 walls. I did all 4, the entire building. And this is in the middle, it's called the Pomona Copia. And this is in the middle of downtown Pomona, which still, it's amazing to me. And this was incredibly supported by the city. They love it. I mean, it's now become a landmark thing, not only for Pomona, but for the whole Inland Empire. There ain't anything else like this out there. And it's like, it's like a giant spaceship. It's just landed in the middle of Pomona. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's right on almost the main square, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, this is actually, it's an art school. There's 3 of these in Los Angeles County, like famed schools. So it's a school that teaches art, theater, dance, and this is the middle school, and they have a high school as well. And the original one is at Cal State LA, and then this is the second one, and then the third one that was done was it's on Cesar Chavez. It's a metal, the big, the money guy.
It's all right.
Yeah, anyway. So he was responsible for that. But I love saying this about these schools because the statistics, because each one of these art schools in LA County have a high school graduation rate of 99%, and about 95% go on to college.
Right.
The average high school graduation rate in California is 75%. So I don't understand that, because the first things that always get cut from the school systems, guess what?
Right.
Are the art programs.
But I think what's fascinating is what the head of the school has been talking about in terms of just the emotional response of the students. Maybe you can just talk a little bit about that, because that's really, I think, especially where Viva LA and Arts Initiative is going with public art. I think the emotional component, or just the community component, is really important.
In that regard, thanks for that one, because in that regard, it is an interesting question for me, because I was telling you about my background with my parents and growing up the way I did, and how I was influenced by all the creativity. And so I really have a very positive relationship with the world. I see the world as very positive. And that was chiefly because of my art exposure. So I wonder, and now they're bringing me back now to paint the whole high school. I did the year before I did this, I did a major wall on their high school campus, and now they're bringing me back to paint the entire high school. So these kids are going to, for better or for worse, are going to be influenced by my vibe, my energy, for all the way through middle school and high school, which I think it's a responsibility, and I take that, and I love that challenge, and I feel that I'm worthy of that.
Yeah, but we went up there to meet with them about the high school not too long ago, and the woman in charge there basically said that the students really they comment that they have a noticeable physical change when they arrive at the high school and when they walk inside. It really, you know, if they're having a bad morning, she's heard that the students actually, their whole mood can change when they see the building, and by the time they get inside, they're motivated and ready to work. I mean,
And-
it was an amazing story,
and
I think it's really telling about the power of art, you know.
And no graffiti.
That's right.
No
It's
graffiti.
pre-graffitied.
It's no.
No, I know.
Nobody puts graffiti on it.
No, that's right.
I mean, it's well lit because at night they've lit it all up for nighttime too.
Yeah,
but
right.
there's no graffiti on it. There's been no graffiti on that at all.
LA does actually have a culture of respecting graffiti. For those of you that don't know, I mean, there's you know, in some of the
More or
more
less.
edgy areas there is some, you know, over tagging and things like that. But in general, the public art in California is fairly well respected.
Well, since I've
you
been
know,
doing
luckily.
a lot of murals now in Los Angeles, the underground, the street thing is the real taggers.
Right.
They don't cover other stuff. If they like it,
Right.
they don't do it.
Right.
It's like what they call punk kids or something. They're walking along the street and they have a pencil or whatever and they do a thing or something.
Right.
But generally speaking, if they like something, they leave it alone.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've been thinking about, well, you've been working at a much larger scale, and we're gonna have to actually speed this up a little bit. But thinking really at the city level for quite a few years. So on the slides right now, I have one of your early drawings, and you've even now overlaid the city on top of you in this image. I don't know if that was unconscious or what, but you know, the phrase that you developed Viva LA back in what, 2006? You know, something like that, 15 years ago.
I developed the phrase Viva LA in conjunction with that sculpture. I think there's a slide.
Actually,
of
it's
that.
right here. Yeah.
Right. So this was the sculpture that I did. Actually, the original sculpture was without the Ritz-Carlton, without
But it's actually a 3D sculpture, right? So all these lines, everything. What are we seeing here? It's not paint. It's,
okay.
What is it?
This is interesting because this sculpture is, and it's viewable now actually in downtown LA in the window of the downtown bid. It's about 5 feet by 11 feet. It's about a foot deep, and there's no paint on this at all. It's 100% all done, and it's the first time I ever did anything like this. It's 100% tape. It's a million pieces of different kinds of tape that I cut up, a mosaic-y kind of thing. So when you actually see it in real life, the texture is a really big important part of it, and it's very plasticky, very toy-like.
Was it Sixth and
Playful,
Olive?
playful.
Sixth and Olive.
It's a Sixth and Olive.
It's actually worth.
downtown.
You can see it right from the street. So if you're
Right.
ever walking by there, it's worth a gander.
Yes.
Because it's about full scale right now. It's about 11 feet wide.
But that's what opened. That turned out to be the keys of the city for me, in a way, and because it led to another project which still hasn't come together totally yet. But from this, because then I thought, well, I'm gonna do T-shirts of the drawing, and I'm sitting there at night and I'm thinking. I'm going through different phrases. I'm thinking, what goes with that art piece and the shape of it and everything? And somehow the light bulb went off, and I said Viva LA, and it just had a fluidity. And my experience since that time with having that phrase, there's something, it becomes like one word. It's very easy to say. And I think that's kind of the magic of it. And it has a familiar quality to it. And now that we actually are able to own that, it's something that's like something that people think it's been around for a long, long time. It has the familiarity, but it all comes out as one word, and I think that's part of the success of why it continues to grow. And we're now in the next phase because the mission here.
So so just give an overview about where we are with Viva LA and kind of where we're going.
Our mission with the phrase Viva LA is to make it ubiquitous in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And for me, obviously, personally, that would be a fantastic legacy thing to do.
But we've been working on this together, and really the goal is, especially at this time when LA is changing so much, it will be the one thing that everybody in LA will have in common, actually, right? Whether you're from Beverly Hills or South Central or Burbank even, or North Hollywood loves Viva LA, out here in Venice is LA. So, the neighborhoods, for those of you watching this who aren't in California, just like New York, actually, there's New York, but then there's Little Italy, there's Chelsea, there's Hell's Kitchen, there's all these other things. And the areas and neighborhoods of California and LA basically are very kind of, they feel very insular until now, actually. I really feel like we've been talking about with people all over Los Angeles, and everybody has unanimously said we really need this. We need something to bring us all together. And it's a very altruistic goal, but art, I think, and art and energy has the power to do that, actually. This really started as an idea, many years ago, and your art has really, your art and your life, I think, has inspired the mission of the brand, which is to focus on the positive, creative, forces in Los Angeles that can be used and harnessed for, to move everything forward instead of backward. You're always moving forward, right? Like a shark is always moving forward.
No, true.
Yeah,
right. It never backs up.
They can't go backwards.
They only sharks, and it's interesting. They never go to sleep. They must go to sleep.
Well, I think they're on autopilot, right?
They're always moving forward. They never stop moving forward.
And they can't go backwards. It's impossible.
They cannot go backwards.
That's right.
Right.
That's the other thing that we love. Yeah, we love about sharks.
Great whites can go backwards.
Oh, the great whites. Okay, Stanley says the great whites can go backwards.
Okay, well there you go.
We stand corrected.
We stand corrected. Yes.
So it's Viva LA is far more than just a logo or a brand for apparel or things like that. Although that will be part of it because it'll be a way for you to really show how much you love LA. New York has their brand. It was really kind of it was limiting. I think that we didn't have a way to express it.
We've started this program.
Yeah. So Viva LA. So this is actually the part of it, I guess the social part of it and the apparel part of it will fund the Viva LA Arts Initiative, which is really the focus of the brand. The purpose of the brand is to bring everybody together, obviously, but really it's the power of art and Andre's spirit of positivity and creative energy.
Well, working with other artists as well.
And collaboration, exactly, and celebrating the arts as a way, really, for almost anything, for relationships, economic development, almost anything, personal fulfillment. And so, what the Viva La Arts Initiative is doing, it'll be ultimately funded once the brand launches, through merchandise sales, etc. Right now, we're doing private contributions to get it off the ground before the brand launches. But one of the first example is we're working with a group of basically communities, for lack of a better word, community stakeholders, like the Dream Hotel and yeah, go ahead.
And this is in the Hollywood
It's the
area.
new district
It's a historical district originally called the Vinyl District in Hollywood, which interestingly enough was the music center, the original music center of Los Angeles.
Right.
I mean, that's why the Capitol Records building is there, but they did everything with the music business was in that square that you're seeing in Hollywood.
So it's between
the
Sunset and Hollywood.
Right, and the developers there that
Schrader
own a lot of restaurants and bars in the area, they've gone back and they've trademarked that name now, and they're now in the beginning, which we're going to be helping big time with them, promoting the Vinyl District in Hollywood. Because again, remember, I mean, the two, and this is truly LA history right now, in the redevelopment of downtown LA and also Hollywood. I mean, through the roof.
Right.
And so they're all working to market and promote these different areas now.
And I think what the business owners or the real estate owners up there, who are driving this project, what they understand is that art has the power. Well, art is attractive, right? Art brings people together,
right?
And their focus is to move it forward through an public art program.
Well, in that regard, public art is the key word there.
Right.
So we're into promoting and backing. Funding.
Yes.
Funding murals.
That's
starting pretty much in Hollywood area.
Well, we're starting with the Vinyl District because it's.
We're going to try to push the murals as much as we can around Los Angeles in general.
Ultimately, it will be. But we're going to take on all projects of all different scales and scopes around the city. But this is really the first one. Right. And so there are gaps in funding for public art. I mean, there's a 1% credit system in Los Angeles where 1% of a development project goes into a fund, but that fund, the money doesn't go back to the area where the development is. It goes into a general fund that gets basically dispersed wherever they feel it's necessary. So even though Hollywood is booming, the 1% money really is not coming back to Hollywood. It's going, actually, rightfully so, to other areas like South Central or other areas where they don't have the development but need the funding. So the Vinyl District really saw that they had a gap. There is no public funding, no city funding, and they can't fund it themselves. So we're, ultimately, like I said, the Viva LA Arts Initiative will be funded by the Viva LA brand that hopefully everyone around the world will be wearing. But it's really funneled back into the arts in Los Angeles to commission artists to create public works. What's that?
The community.
The community, yeah, into Los Angeles, and right back into the community, literally.
Right.
So the first project that we're doing is with the Vinyl District, and like I said, right now it's going to be kind of contributions until the brand is up and running. But this is the Sound Factory building on Selma and Ivar, right in the heart of the Vinyl District, and it's where really colossal recording artists have musicians.
Any idea how old the Sound Factory is? Really?
Well, it's been at least
back
since
to
the 60s,
or 50s or
yeah.
something, right?
Yeah, maybe even 50s.
Maybe even earlier.
I think it's maybe the 50s, but it's really a classic, and it's still obviously an important recording studio. But this is what it looks like now, right? So Megan Hall is one of the street artists that we work with, and that we've had events with her at the LA Fashion Week, etc. She does a lot of live art painting, but we're working with her to fund basically a mural of art, music-inspired art will be actually throughout the Vinyl District. But this is the first project that we're going to fund as an organization, and the building owners love it. The organization loves it. And the other thing that I didn't say which is right down the street, is a similar vein, is the Dream Hotel has offered, well, we're setting up the partnership basically, but have offered their entire hotel, the interior of the lobby, the restaurants, the rooms, to showcase Los Angeles artists, and Bix and Viva La Arts Initiative were to curate an ongoing schedule of art installations, of art events, etc., and everything that's sold through the Dream Hotel. They don't want a percentage. They actually want it to all get funneled back into the Arts Initiative, so it'll go right back into the same community where it's displayed.
Right.
So
Excellent.
it's just going to be a funnel for LA artists,
Right.
and then we're going to roll that out to their other locations in New York and
Great.
Thailand
Great.
and other things.
Great.
So I think it's really important, because it means that basically that organizations, businesses, etc., they can
Right.
really make a difference in the arts culture and the creativity culture of a city.
Great.
So, and to that note, I actually would like to introduce the video that you saw at the beginning. Actually, this front row, everybody here in the
question.
everybody in the no, I'm going to introduce them first quickly, because I would like you all just to stand up for a second. So. We'll start down here. It's Stanley Bishop on the end. He created all the 3D photography for the Google show. He's amazing. He's right here in Venice. Gary Wise, he works at Budman Studios, where we do a lot of collaborative work with them, and Jim Mudman is there on things right around the corner. Who's that?
He's the how's it feel guy.
He's the how's it feel guy. And Lucius is actually in between. He's the one that did all the video editing for that incredible video, and the cameraman. Karen Mina, she works with Ron Robinson. She does all the artist collaborations, creates unbelievable LA-inspired products with Ron Robinson. That's where we worked with her on the kind of soft launch of the Viva LA brand last year. She's unbelievable. And Edward Kubo, he's has a real estate a company, and he buys and sells real estate. And he supports the Viva LA Arts Initiative with everybody that basically buys and sells a house. He purchases an artwork from an LA artist through the Arts Initiative and gives it to his clients, as like a housewarming present. So, and I think that's, those little things, they really add up, because the more work that gets out there, I think the better. And I think we'll end on a couple Viva LA notes, and then we can just talk for a few minutes.
Viva LA!
Viva LA! Viva LA! Viva LA!
Viva LA!
Viva LA!
Viva LA!
North Hollywood loves Viva LA.
Viva LA!
Honduras, viva LA.
Viva LA! Viva LA!
Viva LA!
Right on.
Thank you. So, yeah, we have a few minutes if anybody has any questions or comments. Yeah, Stanley.
It's so exciting, so good to hear this, to see it. I just feel even like this is a sliver of what I love about LA, like really captured. And I feel like it's something people will rally around. Also, just I think that in civics now, people feel helpless. And so finding like a creative way to find a public-private solution to something is really beautiful. So just, mazel tov. Like, thank you guys. Bless you guys.
Yep.
Viva LA.
I have like a nerdy art question I might struggle to articulate, so please bear with me. You mentioned that recently in your work you transitioned in the scale of your pieces to larger pieces, and I had always thought that the tension between color and shape in your work was like very powerful, and you know, one of the key things. So I was just curious, like, as your works transitioned in scale, what's your experience been like of the color, the texture, you know, and the shapes that you like?
Right. You know, I can't say exactly. I just know I always, you know, to me, again, being an outsider and looking at America from the outside, to me, always America was always like big, big. Everything was big. So for me, I just, bigger is better. And so that's where I gravitate towards that. But there's something about my work, I think, that just intrinsically has a large thing about it. And that's why in my collaborations with other artists or other companies on a very big scale, that's why I think they've been able to blend so seamlessly. And again, I feel that's why it's kind of appropriate and symbolic that my 50-year Viva LA art retrospective would be at a place like Google. And remember, Google is all about a TV screen too. So it's all, to me, that's all about images. However you disseminate those images, it's still all about images.
Except
Content.
we're real people in here in a room interacting with each other, which I think, you know, everybody's realizing is critical. You can't be behind a screen all the time.
Well, no,
right?
But there's a lot of it.
It is too much,
yeah.
Great. Thanks, Stanley.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else?
Any artists in the room, actually? No?
I think it's important. I think there's some people that don't know the definition of Viva. I think you should,
Viva?
Viva.
Well, the great thing about Viva is it translates into almost every language. You can even just, without even knowing the meaning, I think you just almost know.
Right.
You know, vitality. But I mean, it's about
an affirmation.
living, loving, creating.
Long
being.
live. Long live LA.
It's a positive affirmation.
Long live LA.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's a great word. It's a great word. And actually, we, you know, obviously when we were filming this all around LA, we did 7 locations all around LA in one day.
Saturday.
Hundreds of people. Yeah, we just did it on Saturday, and Lucius pulled this together in 3 days. But we met, literally hundreds of people. And the Spanish-speaking ones loved it. The Polish people loved it. You know, everybody got it. And there's something about it. I think it just kind of gets in there.
Well, there's something about it. Like I said, it's
Yeah.
the way it comes out of your mouth.
Oh,
it's fun to say.
And the
It's
police.
easy to say. Even Viva Las Vegas trails off. It's a lot.
Viva LA, that's right.
Yeah, but Viva LA is like one word.
But when we said it to the Hollywood division, LAPD, they said, oh yeah, what are you doing? He said, what are you doing this for? I said, well, it's you know, like the I Love New York, but for LA. He's like, we want that.
Right, we need that.
We need that.
Right.
He's like, we need that. And I really do think the altruistic goal is still the best one, which is that it'll be the one thing that everybody has in common. Right.
Please. Oh, the microphone, right.
Oh yeah, toss.
There you go.
Right.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Really amazing to see you here in person in the flesh.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, looking at the colors and the vibrancy of your art and some of the imagery and kind of iconography that you use a lot or incorporate a lot, I'm thinking about the Mexican history and heritage of Los Angeles and kind of like wondering how much that factored into your decision to settle here or how much that inspires you. Maybe you already covered this, sorry.
No, that was a huge part of it, but that gets into the weather. Why a lot of people came here. And because I remember I said I went all the way through high school in Seoul, Korea. After 4 winters in Seoul, Korea, that was it. And I felt life was too short to have to deal with wintertime on a steady basis if you had the choice.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So that was a major, the weather thing was a major fact. But a lot of my early years were spent, like I would say, Indonesia and Thailand, which are very, very color centric. That helped me a lot. And because of the weather here, again, that was more familiar to me to Asia. California or Southern California, LA was more like Asia. So that made me feel more comfortable, and it kept my palette, which was always was going towards color.
But you have
alive.
like, what kind of relationship do you have, like, let's say, with the I guess Latinx, right? Latinx, like art community in LA. I mean, do you have?
You know, I can't say consciously what that is. I just feel it again.
Yeah.
I just feel it.
Well,
And
we were at a meeting.
I've been called an honorary Latino.
That's the thing. We were at a meeting, and literally, he's an honorary All right. You know, I think it's true because the colors. I mean, these colors.
There is a vibe, and I'm not copying it. I'm not setting out to copying or mimic. It's just my thing that happens to be correct for that sentiment.
But when you get a lot of people together, you know, it rubs off. You know, I'm now talking about omens. I mean, you know.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, it's really.
Yeah.
Andre's big into omens, and you know, and now I'm, you know, and actually gratitude, you know, and just acknowledging the little things that happen that influence us. I think is a big part of what you do. It's a big part of what Viva LA is, and I think the more people who do acknowledge the good things that happen to them on a more regular basis, I think the happier we'll all be.
Yeah, because I like to leave one last thought then with people, is that for better or for worse, life is cumulative. And piece by piece, each one of our lives gets pieced together. And it's up to all of us individually how you want to put those pieces together.
Right.
But it happens whether you like it or not.
Right.
It does happen. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your
so much
time and attention.
Thank you, thank you.
And yeah, and obviously take those bags with you. We got these shopping bags for you. You're the first ones to have Viva LA shopping bags.
And I have Viva LA stickers for everybody.
That's right, yes. So Viva LA.
Thank you both so much for
You're
coming.
welcome. Thank you.
Thank
you. Thank you.